Hello everybody! Welcome back to my little corner of the internet where I'll talk about stories of my life, my work both as a comic book author and a translator, my cats Hey Hey and Serengeti, and hopefully soon a new one, and the occasional movie, book or TV series review and recommendation, as well as some rants if the feeling hits. So by now, I think everybody knows that this year's Oscar had a huge surprise by giving the Best Song Oscar to the actual best song of the bunch. That was not only not from a Disney movie, it was not even in English. Yes, Natu Natu, which translates to Dance Dance, and you have no idea how hard it is for me not to make a Dance Dance Revolution bad joke given the subject theme of the actual movie it's part of, won the Oscars and the hearts of everyone thanks to the bouncy music, the amazing choreography by Prem Rakshit, I hope I am not butchering his name, the incredibly cinematography and direction of S.S. Ramajouli, and of course the unending charisma of the two leads, Ram Charan and Junior Nitya. However, I am not going to talk about RRR yet. I want the hype to die down completely. First, because I need a couple more lessons in Hindi and figuring out some words in Telugu to talk about it. Yes, I take research very seriously. And second, because as great as it is, it's just the gate to the amazing rabbit hole of Tollywood films. Not to be confused with Bollywood films, and that's a subject for another day. I started watching the filmography of both the RRR stars, and boy, I found some very interesting things and movies to recommend. And we're going to start with what is considered one of the best, if not the best, Ram Charan movie besides RRR. The 2018 film Rangashtalam.
Rangasthalam.
If you have never in your life seen an Indian film, or your only example is RRR, we have to start putting some foundation knowledge before we tackle Rangashtalam itself. Because if I start with Rangashtalam is a 2018 Masala film in Telugu language written and directed by Sukumar and starring Ram Charan, I think I will lose you right after the date. So let's start with what is a Masala film, because that's going to be very, very important later, not only when we talk about Rangashtalam, but in future videos where I will recommend some other Tollywood films, which are the Indian movies made in the south of India, usually in the Telugu language, as opposed to Bollywood, which is in the north of India and in Hindi. And there are other industries in other languages, but that will be for future videos. Masala, formally, are the blend of spices, sometimes rice, sometimes in paste, which are very important in Indian cuisine. But in this particular context, it refers to a very specific type of film that started in the 70s in India and are a mixture of genres, from action to romance, from drama to comedy, and of course with musical numbers that may or may not have anything to do with the actual plot. So when you watch a Masala film, you are never going to be sure of what the genre itself is. You know there will be dancing, because every Masala film has between 3 to 5 songs minimum, and yes, in that sense, RRR is a Masala film too. We have the action, the drama, and the comedy together with one incredible dance number that is still in our heads months later. But this is not about RRR, so let's go back to the basics. Telugu is one of the many languages in India, and about 81 million people speak it as a native language. It is also one of the official languages of the country and a protected language in South Africa, where it's also spoken. Which is why there is a huge industry of movies and series made exclusively in Telugu. And the difference between people who only speak Telugu and people who speak the other official language in India is sometimes a plot point. Rangashtalam is not one of those, but again, as I will keep talking about Telugu films, this will come in handy to know. With that said, well, Sukumar is a director who tends to write very complex screenplays with unexpected twists and morally grey protagonists. Oh yes, I forgot to mention, precisely because Masala films have a little bit of everything and are between 2.5 and 3 hours long, most of them have an unexpected twist that changes everything you saw before, so they are very good for a rewatch. Ram Charan is an Indian actor, producer, entrepreneur, and owner of Apollo Team and the Riding Club, because no one in this video is just one thing. And now I want to see Ram in the Iron Man armor for no reason at all. Anyway, with all that said, what is Rangashtalam about? Well, considering that we do have a mixture of genres and a couple of twists, I am just going to give you the bare bones to avoid any heavy spoilers. In the 1980s, in a tiny village named Rangasthalam, Chitty Babu is the man in charge of irrigating the fields with an electric motor. He is quite fast to anger as he has partial deafness, and this makes others look down on him despite his work being vital for the village. When his elder brother, Kumar Babu, returns after a year away, Kumar grows angry to discover that the president of the village council is in cahoots with the cooperative society in order to charge people more interest than normal for loans taken, seizing their lands and homes, taking advantage of their villagers' lack of education, and in general keeping the village in poverty. Because of this, Kumar decides to register for the opposing political party and try and end the president's rule over the town. One of the most interesting things about Masala Films is that because the plot itself is such a mix and match on different genres, what really has to catch your attention are the characters. If the characters manage to charm you, to interest you, to make you invested with them, it's very easy to forgive certain plot twists and tropes of the genre because you want to know what's going to happen to them. In the case of Rangasthalam, the story is centered all around Chitty Babu. While the general happenings sometimes go beyond him, and certain events really don't affect him directly, so he's not quite interested or informed of what's going on, it's through his eyes that we see the village, the villagers, and everything that happens around them. We first meet him in a flash forward when he's witness to a very bad car accident, and he does his best to save the victim, taking him to a hospital and begging the doctors to save him, before we go back to the past to the proverbial "how did we get here" segment of the story. From then on, we follow Chitty, not the plot. We learn of his hearing issue and how he dislikes people yelling at him or even calling him deaf, despite the fact that it makes his life incredibly difficult. On the other hand, he has also managed to come with many strategies to cope, such as having a close friend, Mahesh, who also works for him and his family, to tell him everything that happened in the village and what was said to him every night so that he knows what's going on. Chitty deafness is very interesting and the first thing that caught my attention on this particular movie, because it's both downplayed by Chitty himself most of the time, to the point of rejecting a hearing aid when his brother, worried that his hearing is getting worse, takes him to a doctor to get one. The hearing aid is perfectly functional and allows Chitty to hear perfectly, but he refuses it because it clears the doubts if I am deaf or not, which is a very important plot point, and the movie, the narrative, and the sound editing itself call attention to Chitty's disability all the time without making Chitty be less for it. The first way in which the movie calls attention to Chitty's deafness is barely noticeable, but during the dances, which are on the Dapakutus or Kut genre from South India, that has a huge emphasis on percussions, Chitty is just a tiny bit out of sync with everyone else. He's constantly putting his hand to his ear to hear better, and he's following the rhythm, not the melody. There is only one song that breaks this, the last one of the movie, and this is due to the narrative reasons, as it's the one song that Chitty doesn't seem to hear at all, so of course it's the one that he will not react to, and that's enough for that song because then I get into spoilers. Musical numbers in Indian movies are very interesting because they go from musical interlude that has absolutely nothing to do with the movie to if you miss this, you are missing the whole point of the plot, and even includes something called item songs, which are pretty much the hero dancing with a girl who is not only not his romantic interest, but also hadn't been seen before the item song and will never be seen again. But I digress. The narrative, on the other hand, also emphasizes Chitty's deafness because while the main plot, the president and the society abusing villagers and their illiteracy to make themselves rich, has nothing to do with Chitty himself, at first, as the issue started before he was born, pretty much every important plot point happens because Chitty is there, and how he and his family navigate life in rural India during the 80s with this situation, with a man who refuses to accept his deafness because he fears that in that case he will be seen as less. The best example I can give of this is the romantic subplot that happens in the first part of the movie. Chitty is in love with Lakshmi, who happens to be the only woman in town who is not aware of his partial deafness, so she constantly mumbles to him while having conversations. This, of course, causes Chitty to try 1,000 different ways to figure out what she's saying without telling her that he can't hear, and thus leads to many misunderstandings, which include that at one point their roles are getting reversed. It starts with Chitty chasing Lakshmi, but then Chitty gets angry at her, and then it's Lakshmi chasing Chitty as he ignores her, which also happens to be one of the best songs of the movie, Rangama Mangama. Check it out in the official Lahari Music YouTube channel, even if it's without subtitles. It is amazing. The acting, the choreography, the dancing, everything. Finally, the sound editing does the best part of the heavy lifting, as many times it just imitates how Chitty may be hearing things, muting everything around him so that no matter how good our hearing is, we are as clueless as Chitty about what is going on. We actually hear like Chitty in those moments. This effect is a bit lost when you watch it with subtitles, which is necessary unless you speak Telugu, but it's still quite obvious and very interesting way of getting you into the head of the character. While Chitty is the center of the story, both as the point of view character and or somewhat unreliable narrator, that doesn't mean that the other characters are not equally memorable. From Aunt Rangama, played wonderfully by Anasuya Bharadwaj, the town's engine owner, Chitty's confidant and married woman whose husband is away in Dubai, to Mahesh, portrayed by Mahesh Akshanta as Chitty's helper and translator, to Kashi, played by Shatru, and who starts the movie as Chitty's main rival in general, and probably one of the town's bullies with his brothers, and ends up being one of his best allies. Everyone brings their A game. Special mention goes to both Ramalakshmi, played by Samantha Kenny, who is Chitty's love interest and managed to convey a lot of emotion in her face, mostly by being annoyed at Chitty's confusing attitude towards her, and Kumar Babu, played by Adi Pinsetti, who is Chitty's older brother, whose arrival back from the South Gulf is what really starts the political plot of the movie. As I mentioned, Masala films tend to have more than one plot going on and more than one genre. In the case of Rangashtalam, the two most obvious are the romantic comedy shenanigans of Chitty's very turbulent courtship of Lakshmi, and the political unrest in Rangasthalam thanks to the president, played by a very sinister Jagapati Babu, and his corruption. However, talking too much about either plot would ruin some of the best twists of the argument, so in that sense I will just tell you that you have to watch it as blind as possible to get the full experience. However, talking about the heart of the characters will not spoil anything, so I will explain a little bit more. Let's start with the villain, the president, who has been in power for 30 years and is so respected that no one even dares to put a nomination against him. And when he nominates himself every year, the town has to celebrate. This is said in the first 15 minutes of the movie, so you get a very good introduction to the main problem, even if we don't even hear the president speak until much later. His presence in the plot is impossible to escape. In every single scene, once you are aware how much he affects the town, he is there. Even if he is not in many scenes of the movie himself. It is his shadow, the one that puts darkness even in the most comedic scenes, such as Chitty ignoring everything around him because he fell in love. When the movie begins, Kumar is just returning home, and this is the real heart of the movie. The relationship between the two brothers, which is very warm and still a bit complicated. In fact, when we first met Kumar, Chitty just refuses to talk to him because before leaving, a year before, Kumar had yelled at him for using one of Kumar's shirts, and had not apologized yet. Unfortunately, it's precisely the arrival of Kumar, the one villager with superior education, what makes things start changing in Rangasthalam and start the second political plot. And as Chitty tells us in the first song of the movie, in Rangasthalam, we're all toys and puppets who cannot stop once the game starts. Oh yes, by the way, Rangasthalam means stage. In my opinion, Rangashtalam is an excellent movie to start watching Telugu films right after RRR, or even if you haven't watched RRR and want to see something really different from the usual blockbuster. It will require for you to read subtitles, yes, but trust me, the whole experience is an amazing one that is well worth the unfamiliar sense of having to read subtitles if you have never done so. And I would love to hear what you thought of the movie in the comments below. I want to thank my dear patrons Mitch Hyman, Elaine Ho, Jessic, Ellie Writer, and writer Philip Leto, as well as my first supporter Tanya Pineda and the most amazing Amy Song, without whom none of these videos would be possible. I also want to remind you that if you want to support these and my other projects and get your name mentioned here, you can do so at patreon.com/Adalisa, written link on description, as I know my name can be hard to spell, and with just $1 a month you will always be thanked in my videos, as well as get access to a ton of art before anyone else, and get the chance to suggest future subjects for videos too. You can also support me through Ko-fi, and for each coffee you will get mentioned in 3 future videos. If you can't support me this way, I also accept likes, subscription to the channels, and of course, you sharing the links. I also welcome all your questions, feedbacks, and suggestions in the comments below. This was Adalisa Zarate, and I will see you soon so we can grab another cup of coffee and talk about, well, yes, RRR, but not in the way that you expect. So come back here so we can talk about RRR and the use of language as a narrative tool.